going all the way back to 1970. Kate Millett, Sexual Politics, the very first mainstream book, or what you would call a mainstream publisher, publishing by a radical feminist, a leader of the women's liberation movement, Kate Millett, Sexual Politics. Sexual politics, what is that about? And bringing it all the way up to Laurie Penny. This is a very popular book. If you go into Amazon and you look up women's studies or feminism, you will find that this is one of the top books of the bestsellers list, Unspeakable Things. Well, in here, she begins to criticize the idea of romantic love. And she quotes a woman named Alexandra Kollontai. Who is Alexandra Kollontai? She was the only female commissar in Vladimir Lenin's Bolshevik government. One of the few of the original 14 commissars in the Bolshevik government when Lenin overthrew the Russian government. Only 4 survived Stalin's purges, and she was one of them. And this connection between Marxism and feminism is no accident, my friends. The radical feminism movement started within the New Left of the 1960s. They adapted Marxist thinking, the whole Hegelian dialogue and dialectic and everything. One of the next most important early book about feminism, The Dialectic of Sex by Shulamith Firestone. Okay, again, using Marxist rhetoric. And who do we have here? We have Andrea Dworkin. Everyone knows Andrea Dworkin's very infamous book, Intercourse. But how many people have looked at Andrea Dworkin's first book, Woman Hating? Because it's very interesting how she talks about getting rid of the incest taboo. Because the incest taboo is part of patriarchy. Gosh, that sounds kind of weird. Well, you start looking it up, and then you come back and bring it back to how it's coming up in politics. What you find out is that the women's studies programs at American universities and colleges are the driving force. This is where the radical theory is developed and taught and propagated. I was researching. I went to Google. Well, how many women's studies programs are there in this country? Well, there are at 700 colleges and universities now have women's studies programs that enroll 90,000 students annually. So that over the course of a decade, they produce about 100,000 of these hardcore ideologues. And this, because women's studies is what they call interdisciplinary, this spreads out over the curriculum. Psychology, sociology, history, literature, political science. By controlling academia, because no one in academia would dare criticize feminism directly, by controlling academia, they control the intelligentsia. Okay, and there was something that happened in 2005 that a lot of people didn't notice. Larry Summers. Do you know who Larry Summers is? Larry Summers was the president of Harvard University, a liberal in good standing who served in the Clinton administration and subsequently served in the Obama administration. He was the president of Harvard University, and they were having a conference on women in science. And he was asked to give a few remarks, and he got up, and during the course of a long presentation, about 15 minutes, he said 2 words. two words, innate differences. Innate differences. That there are innate differences between men and women. Do we believe men and women are different? Of course men and women are different. If men and women weren't different, what's the point of being men and women? So, but these two words, within a year, he was forced to resign from Harvard University. Harvard University, you can no longer speak the truth that there are differences between men and women. Everybody knows that men and women are different, including feminists. However, they want to, now they've got gender theory. Write this word down. If you're going to write down a word, write down heteronormativity. Patriarchal heteronormativity, or as they also call it, heteronormative patriarchy. Gender theory, radical feminist gender theory. They want to change the way we think about basic concepts of masculine and feminine. And how does this intersect with politics? That's what I'm saying, is that this is the background noise. This is the driving theory behind this claim. Just today, by the way, they tried to depict Scott Walker as pro-rape. It was an incredible thing. This site, Jezebel.com, put up this story and to describe it, what they did, but it was a cheap smear and it was false. They're tipping their hand about what they plan to do. We know what their line of attack is. All they have to do is stay on these core topics: abortion, rape, contraception, health. They want to talk about women's health. Anyways, now, there was a famous quote it's one of the two most famous quotes about feminism were not by feminists. It was by anti-feminists. One of them is Rush Limbaugh's Rule 24. Rush Limbaugh, great truths you can't speak, or whatever it is. The fundamental truths, and that is that feminism is a movement that was created to allow unattractive women access to the mainstream of society. That's one. The other one is Pat Robertson. Pat Robertson, in a 1992 fundraising mail letter, said that radical feminism is a socialist movement that is anti-family, that encourages women to leave their husbands, kill their children, practice witchcraft, destroy capitalism, and become lesbians. And everyone looks at that and says, well, that's got to be crazy. Every single word of that is true. Every single word of that is true. You want to talk about feminism, lesbianism, and witchcraft? 5 books I've already read about lesbian feminist witchcraft. There are real people. It's true. In California, it started with a woman named Shoshana Budapest, who founded a religion, a feminist religion called Dianic Wicca. You want me to spell that, don't you? Yes. D-I-A-N-I-C, Dianic Wicca, W-I-C-C-A. And her name is Shoshana Z, just write Z, Budapest, like the capital of Hungary. Now, these feminist witches created a mythology and borrowed a mythology of witches as being sort of heroic, independent women. They were healers, and they were wise women and stuff like that. The actual history of this, and if you ever want to know the true history of modern witchcraft, I recommend Ronald Hutton, The Triumph of the moon, which tells the truth. But here is the mythology. There's a book about, it's called Enchanted Feminism, The Reclaiming Witches of San Francisco. There's a woman named Miriam Simos, S-I-M-O-S, Miriam Simos, known as Starhawk. Starhawk is her name. Okay, now, why is Starhawk matter? 300,000 copies of her book, The Spiral Dance. It is the most popular book about witchcraft ever published. And she is a lesbian feminist from California. And her, very interesting. When I started this, what was it that got me interested in this? There was this crazy radical feminist blogger, and she wrote a single four-word sentence that caught my attention. No woman is heterosexual, end quote. No woman is heterosexual. What are you talking about? Well, there is actually, hang on, let me find the volume. Where's my book? Where's my book? Aha. This is the book by Professor D. Graham. She's now retired. It's a 1994 book called Loving to Survive. Loving to Survive, Sexual Terror, Men's Violence, and Women's Lives. She quotes Starhawk about witches. Right? A science, a profession book. One of your sources, really, is a lesbian witch? And this book claims that women's heterosexuality is actually a post-traumatic stress disorder caused by the constant fear of male violence. Heterosexuality is imposed on women by the heteronormative patriarchy. Once you accept the idea that men oppress women, all men oppress all women, and all men benefit from the oppression of women,